Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a closer look, a really granular look, at the sources around the 2017 Las Vegas shooting.
Yeah, an event that, it still stands as the deadliest mass shooting by a lone gunman in U.S. history.
Exactly. And it wasn't just, spontaneous. This was meticulously planned.
The whole campaign, really.
Right, which led to this incredibly frustrating conclusion. This act of just profound violence, but with no clear motive. Officially, at least.
And that's really our mission here, isn't it? To sort of reconstruct the anatomy of it all for you, the listener. We'll look at the facts, the chilling preparation.
The timeline of the attack itself, which was chaotic.
Absolutely. And the aftermath, the legal side, the policy changes it triggered. But maybe most importantly, we need to delve into that vacuum, that missing why that just hangs over this case.
So let's start with the core facts. Just lay them out. October 1st, 2017. The night.
Right. The Mandalay Bay Resort overlooking the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival.
And then over about 10 minutes, chaos.
Yeah. The gunman fires from a 32nd floor suite. Over 1,000 rounds.
Into that crowd below. 60 people ultimately killed, not counting the shooter himself.
And hundreds more injured. The scale was just unprecedented for a single shooter event.
Okay, so to really understand the practical side of this, you have to picture the location, the Las Vegas Strip. It's all about this controlled, almost artificial environment.
Right. Luxury, security, theater.
But then you have the Mandalay Bay, 43 stories high.
Towering over the concert venue.
Which gives this perfect elevated firing position.
It really was ideal from a purely tactical, though obviously horrifying perspective.
Yeah.
He was about, 490 yards away from the stage area?
Roughly that, yeah. And the venue itself, Las Vegas Village, it's in this big open space. 15 acres.
Packed. Over 22,000 people there for the final night of this country music festival.
So that elevation advantage is key.
Absolutely critical. Because law enforcement, the victims, they couldn't immediately pinpoint where the shots were coming from.
Right. They couldn't suppress the fire easily.
Exactly. That vulnerability of the crowd, plus his inaccessible position, it was a deadly combination.
So who was the person behind this? Stephen Paddock.
Mm-hmm.
The sources paint this picture, right?
Yeah.
64 years old, former auditor, involved in real estate, lived in Mesquite, Nevada.
Seemed quiet, successful at least on the surface.
Twice divorced, no known kids.
But then there's the family history detail, which is, it's hard to ignore.
His father,
Yeah.
Benjamin Paddock.
Yeah, a notorious bank robber. Actually, on the FBI's 10 most wanted list for 8 years back in the late 60s, early 70s, described as a career criminal, diagnosed as psychopathic, apparently.
Now, investigators were careful about this, weren't they?
They were. They stressed this didn't cause Stephen Paddock to do what he did.
Sure.
But it's a pretty stark background detail, a family history involving high-stakes crime and, frankly, notoriety.
And yet Paddock himself, Stephen, had basically no criminal record.
Just traffic stuff, yeah. Nothing that would flag him.
He wasn't a stranger to Vegas, though. Far from it.
No, he was deeply embedded in the high-stakes gambling world.
The reports say he liked single-player video poker, played high enough to get comps.
Right, the complimentary rooms, meals, all those perks. Which is exactly how he got the suite at Mandalay Bay.
That relationship with the casinos is pretty crucial then.
It really is. The staff knew him, but he cultivated this image of being, solitary, the lone high roller.
Kept to himself.
But if you look at his finances in the couple of years before the attack,
things were going downhill.
Significantly, he'd lost a lot of wealth, but then just before the shooting, she did something really unnerving.
What was that?
He paid off all his gambling debts meticulously.
Like settling accounts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of final accounting behavior paired with what his girlfriend said.
Right. She noted he'd become really distant.
Increasingly so. The relationship wasn't intimate anymore in that last year. He was detached.
That suggests a psychological shift,
Yeah.
right? Not just financial trouble.
It does. Paying off debts like that, if you're planning something final, it's often seen as a marker. Clearing the slate.
His girlfriend mentioned his emotional state too, didn't she? Becoming more volatile.
Yeah, growing detachment, unpredictable volatility. It looked like the emotional isolation was building alongside the physical planning.
Okay, so that shift from this sort of distant gambler figure to someone meticulously planning mass murder, That's where it gets really chilling.
It is, because this wasn't impulsive. The preparation was incredibly methodical. It went on for months.
How far back did the planning go?
Well, the specific scouting for the Route 91 festival seems to have started about a month before.
Okay.
He was checking out views of the village venue from different windows at Mandalay Bay. Reconnaissance.
But his ambitions were bigger than just Vegas, initially.
Oh, definitely. His research showed he was looking at large venues across the country as far back as May 2017. Boston was mentioned.
And he actually booked rooms elsewhere, too.
He did. Sources confirm he reserved a room overlooking the Lollapalooza Festival in Chicago in August 2017.
But he didn't use it.
No, he didn't go. But it shows the intent was there. Targeting a big outdoor crowd was on his mind months earlier.
And closer to the event.
He also stayed at the Ogden, another hotel in Vegas, which overlooks the site for the Life is Beautiful festival.
Which happened just the week before the Route 91 shooting.
Exactly, September 22nd to 24th. So he was actively casing potential large-scale targets right up until the end, selecting based on density, vantage point, feasibility.
And his online activity reflected this.
Very clearly. Mid-September searches included things like SWAT weapons, ballistics chart 308.
So calculating weapon effectiveness.
Right. And SWAT Las Vegas, do police use explosives? He was studying the likely police response, trying to anticipate their tactics.
So when he finally chose Mandalay Bay, the logistics of getting the weapons in there, how did that work?
It was disturbingly simple in a way. He checked into his comped room, 32135, on September 25th.
And they got an adjoining room.
4 days later, yeah. Room 32134, connected. Both had that clear view of the concert site.
And the arsenal. How did he get that much firepower up there?
He used the hotel's own services. Over 6 days, from the 25th right up to October 1st, he brought in 22 suitcases.
22.
Filled with weapons and ammo. And he used the hotel bellman to bring many of them up.
They wouldn't have known what was inside, obviously.
Of course not. They were just doing their job. He was essentially using the luxury service infrastructure against itself.
And then he put up do not disturb signs.
Yep, on both doors, September 30th, to make sure he wouldn't be interrupted while setting everything up.
Okay, let's talk about the weaponry itself. What did investigators find?
A total of 24 firearms in the suite.
All legally purchased.
Yes, across 4 states, Nevada, California, Texas, and Utah. He followed the laws in place at the time of purchase.
What kinds of guns?
Mostly semi-automatic rifles, 14 AR-15 style rifles, which use the .223 caliber round, and 8 AR-10 type rifles, which fire the larger, more powerful .308 caliber round, plus a couple of others.
Why the mix of AR-15s and AR-10s? Tactical reasons.
Almost certainly. The AR-15s with .223 rounds are good for volume of fire, suppressive effect. The AR-10s with .308 rounds, they hit harder, maintain energy better over distance.
Like that 490-yard range.
Exactly. The .308 would still be devastatingly effective at that range, better at penetrating light cover perhaps, while the AR-15s, especially with the bump stocks, were about maximizing the number of rounds downrange quickly.
Which brings us to the bump stocks.
Yes.
That was the key modification, wasn't it?
It really was the defining technical aspect. All 14 of the AR-15s were fitted with them.
Can you explain for our listeners maybe who aren't familiar what exactly a bump stock does, how it works?
Sure. So a normal semi-automatic rifle fires 1 shot each time you pull the trigger. A fully automatic machine gun keeps firing as long as the trigger is held down. A bump stock gets around the legal definition of a machine gun. It replaces the standard shoulder stock and grip. It's designed to slide back and forth slightly.
Right.
So the shooter holds their trigger finger still in the trigger guard. When they fire, the rifle's recoil pushes the whole gun back.
The bump.
Exactly. The stock lets the rifle slide back, and then the shooter's forward pressure on the handguard pushes it forward again, bumping the trigger against the stationary finger, firing another round very quickly.
So it uses the recoil energy itself to simulate automatic fire.
Essentially, yes. It allows rates of fire similar to a machine gun report suggested up to 90 rounds in 10 seconds were possible. That's how he fired over 1,000 rounds in such a short window. It's a mechanical workaround.
And ammo. He must have had a huge amount.
Oh, yes. Numerous high-capacity magazines were found, some holding up to 100 rounds each.
If his planning went beyond just shooting.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned explosives.
Well, explosive materials. In his car, investigators found about 1,600 more rounds of ammunition, plus ammonium nitrate, that's a fertilizer component but also used in bombs,
Right.
and 50 pounds of tannerite.
50 pounds? That sounds like a lot. What is tannerite?
It's a binary explosive, comes in two parts, you mix them, and then it's designed to explode when hit by a high-velocity bullet. 50 pounds is a very significant quantity.
But no actual bomb was assembled.
No assembled device was found. But the presence of those materials, especially the tannerite, led investigators to conclude he had nefarious intent, possibly planning secondary explosions.
Maybe to target first responders, or just add to the chaos.
That's the speculation. We don't know for sure, but the materials were there.
And there was something about tracer rounds, too.
Yeah, another detail showing his planning. He tried to buy tracer ammunition from a licensed dealer, but couldn't.
What did tracer rounds do?
They have a pyrotechnic charge in the base, so they leave a visible trail of light, like a red streak, as they fly. Helps the shooter see where the bullets are going and adjust their aim, especially at night or long range.
And he eventually got them.
He bought them from a private seller in Arizona, apparently. It just adds another layer to the meticulous, almost militaristic preparation.
Okay, so the planning is complete. It's 10:05 p.m. on October 1st. Jason Aldean is on stage.
And that's when Paddock acts. He uses a hammer to break two windows in his suites, creates his firing positions.
Turning that luxury suite into a sniper's nest.
Essentially, yes. And then he starts firing down into the crowd 490 yards away.
In bursts. Right, not just random shots.
Sustained bursts. Initial reports mention bursts of 80 to 100 rounds at a time, thanks to those bump stocks.
The sound.
Yeah.
People didn't immediately know what it was.
Tragically, no. Many accounts, especially from people further back, say they thought it was fireworks, or maybe speakers malfunctioning.
That initial confusion must have cost precious seconds.
It absolutely did. It allowed him to inflict horrific damage before people fully grasped the reality of the attack.
Now, at the same time this is happening, something critical is unfolding inside the hotel on the 32nd floor.
Yes, this is crucial for the timeline. Around 10 p.m., just before the shooting started, a hotel security guard, Jesus Campos.
He went up there for a different reason.
Right, an open door alert somewhere down the hall from Paddock's suite. He gets up there and finds Paddock's door has been somehow barricaded from the inside.
Paddock was expecting someone.
It seems likely he was prepared for an interruption. Because at 10:05 p.m., the exact same time the shooting starts raining down on the crowd, Campos gets near the door, and Paddock fires through the door at him. About 35 rounds fired through the door.
Hitting Campos.
Yes, Campos was shot in the thigh. He immediately took cover.
And he reported it.
He did. Radio dispatch called hotel security. He identified the shooter's location and that he was taking fire.
And there was someone else there, too, a maintenance worker.
Right, Stephen Shuck. He was nearby. Campos warned him to take cover. Shuck also radioed dispatch, telling them to call the police.
So hotel security knew the exact location of the shooter on the 32nd floor right as the main attack began.
Correct. That information was relayed internally at the very start.
This internal incident, Campos being shot, became a major point of confusion later, didn't it?
It really did, the timing of it. But Paddock wasn't just focused on the crowd or the hotel hallway.
He shot at something else, too.
Yeah, he fired 8 bullets towards McCarran International Airport, specifically at a huge jet fuel tank.
How far away was that?
About 2,000 feet, considerably further than the crowd.
Did he hit it?
He did. One bullet actually penetrated the tank wall.
But it didn't explode.
Thankfully, no. Jet fuel isn't like gasoline, it's basically kerosene. It's much less volatile. A bullet impact usually isn't enough to ignite it, unlike what you might see in movies.
Still, the intent was there, targeting critical infrastructure.
It suggests an aim to cause maximum chaos and destruction across the city, not just at the concert.
So, back on the ground, law enforcement starts arriving on the Strip. What was the situation like for them?
Utter chaos. Reports of heavy gunfire from an elevated position, but initially confusion about exactly where.
Mandalay Bay, Luxor next door, the festival grounds.
All were reported initially, and worse, there were multiple erroneous reports of other active shooters at different hotels along the Strip.
Diversions.
Exactly. It tied up critical resources, delayed getting everyone focused on the real threat at Mandalay Bay. It shows just how difficult managing information is in that kind of crisis.
But officers did get to the 32nd floor relatively quickly.
Surprisingly fast, yes. They reached the floor by 10:15 p.m.
Just 12 minutes after the shooting started.
And they found the wounded Campos a minute later. He pointed them towards Paddock's room.
But they didn't go in right away.
No, the room wasn't breached until 11:20 p.m.
That's over an hour after they got to the floor. Paddock had stopped firing around 10:15 p.m.
That's right. He stopped shooting well before the breach, when they finally used explosives to get in.
They found him dead.
Yes, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the mouth.
That delay, that hour-long gap between arrival on the floor and the breach, caused a lot of questions.
A huge amount of public scrutiny. Police protocols for barricaded shooters involve careful planning, securing the area, trying to establish communication. But the length of the delay was controversial.
And it fed into the timeline confusion, especially about Campos.
Absolutely. The initial official story seemed to suggest Campos was shot after the main volley of fire into the crowd stopped.
Which didn't line up with the 10:05 p.m. time.
Exactly. And that discrepancy created immediate skepticism. It fueled conspiracy theories online about cover-ups or shifting narratives.
Sheriff Lombardo had to publicly address it, right?
He did, multiple times. He pushed back hard against conspiracy theories, attributing the changes to the sheer complexity of the situation. Sorting through conflicting radio calls, witness reports, dispatch logs from thousands of people in panic mode, it takes time to piece together accurately.
So the final confirmed timeline is Campos was shot at 10:05 p.m.
Yes. Concurrent with the start of the shooting into the crowd. That's the accepted sequence now.
The human toll of this event is just devastating. And the final number of deaths wasn't immediate.
That's right. It's an important point. Initially, 58 victims were reported dead that night or shortly after.
But the official count is now 60, excluding Paddock.
Yes, that revision came in October 2020. 2 survivors, sadly, passed away from complications directly related to their injuries, but much later.
How much later?
One died in November 2019, over 2 years after the shooting. The other in May 2020, almost 3 years later. It just shows the long-lasting physical trauma.
And the number injured.
Around 867 people were injured in total. That includes people trampled in the panic, but over 413 were hit by gunfire or shrapnel.
Just staggering numbers. Where were the victims mostly from? It was a festival crowd, so.
Yeah, very diverse. But California had the highest number. 34 victims were from there, and 4 victims were from Canada.
The medical response must have been overwhelming.
Completely. Sunrise Hospital, which is a level 2 trauma center, got the largest wave. They treated 199 patients.
How quickly did they arrive?
They reported 150 arrived within just 40 minutes of the shooting starting. Imagine that influx.
And there were logistical problems getting people to the main trauma center.
Yes, this complicated things terribly. University Medical Center, UMC, is the only level I trauma center in the area. It's best equipped for the most severe, complex injuries.
But the main road there was closed.
Interstate 15 runs right past Mandalay Bay. It was shut down. And then, compounding that, an erroneous emergency alert went out saying UMC was already full at capacity.
What if it wasn't true?
It wasn't true, but the message went out. So ambulances were diverted away from the Level I Center to other hospitals like Sunrise.
Which put even more strain on them.
Exactly. It impacted triage, getting the right patients to the highest level of care quickly. That misinformation in the heat of the moment had real consequences. It highlighted the absolute need for clear, accurate communication systems during mass casualty events.
The community response, though, in terms of wanting to help.
It was incredible, immediate. People lined up for blocks to donate blood the next day.
Huge outpouring.
The American Red Cross saw something like a 53% jump in donations nationwide in the following days.
But there was a counterpoint to that, wasn't there? About the effectiveness of those immediate mass donations.
There was. Later analysis showed that a significant portion, maybe over 15%, of the blood donated right there in Vegas in the immediate aftermath actually went unused. Well, massive sudden influxes can overwhelm the system's ability to test, process, store, and distribute the blood efficiently before it expires. It raised questions about disaster preparedness strategy.
So is it better to rely on existing blood banks and scheduled donations rather than these huge, immediate reactive drives?
That became part of the discussion. Balancing the public's powerful desire to help right now with the logistical realities of the blood supply chain. It shifted the focus slightly from just emotion to effective strategy.
Amidst all this, there were incredible acts of bravery. People running towards danger, not away.
Absolutely. So many stories. We should mention a few highlighted in the sources.
Right.
Brittany Spear, a civilian EMT who was just attending the concert, she immediately started a triage area right there on the field, treating victims while the shooting was still going on.
Incredible courage. She received an award.
Yes, a Medal of Courage. Then there was Matthew Kobos, a U.S. Army soldier also at the festival.
What did he do?
He shielded a young woman with his own body, then provided life-saving first aid on the ground. He got the Single Act of Heroism Award.
And there was a British soldier, too.
Trooper Ross Woodward, off-duty. The reports say he repeatedly moved towards the gunfire to help move casualties out of the line of fire and provide treatment. Just instinct kicking in.
Amazing.
He received the Queen's Commendation for bravery. It really highlights that impulse some trained individuals have to run towards the problem, even when unarmed themselves.
All right, let's move to the investigation. It was massive, lasted months. Both the Las Vegas Metro Police and the FBI were heavily involved.
Very exhaustive. The LVMPD released their final report after about 10 months. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, the BAU, also published their findings.
And they answered a lot of the how.
Definitely. Yeah. They were very clear on the logistical facts. Paddock acted completely alone.
No conspiracy. No second gunman.
No evidence whatsoever found for either. They also definitively ruled out any links to hate groups, political organizations, or terrorist groups.
Including ISIS, who tried to claim him.
Yes. ISIS claimed he was their soldier, even gave him an Arabic name, but provided zero proof. The FBI dismissed that claim entirely. They found nothing to suggest any ideological motive like that.
Which leaves what?
The massive, frustrating vacuum, the why. Both reports officially concluded that the motive had not been definitely determined.
The FBI said no single or clear motivating factor. For the BAU, whose job is literally profiling these things, that's a pretty stark conclusion.
It is. They couldn't nail it down. Their report leaned towards his deteriorating mental state.
How so?
They focused on things like his reported narcissism, his obsession with status, especially through high-stakes gambling, and the fact that his health was declining, his wealth was declining.
Challenging his self-image.
Exactly. Challenging his identity as this successful, high-status guy who was always in control. They ruled out classic psychosis or specific political religious drivers.
So the theory is this was some kind of final extreme act to reclaim notoriety or control, a response to narcissistic injury.
That seems to be the direction the BAU leaned, seeking infamy when other forms of status were fading. But, and this is the key, they couldn't find that smoking gun. No manifesto, no suicide note explaining it, no final video.
Just silence on the motive?
Which is terrifying in itself. It shows that someone can become so isolated, so internally focused on whatever dark path they're on, that they can plan and execute something this catastrophic without leaving behind a clear reason in the way we usually understand it.
But they did find physical evidence of his meticulous planning during the event prep.
Oh, yes. A handwritten note was found in the suite. But it wasn't a manifesto.
What was it?
Calculations, distance to the crowd, wind considerations, bullet trajectory adjustments, purely technical.
The mind of an engineer, almost. Coldly logical.
Precisely. And the cameras he set up.
Right, he had surveillance cameras.
Hidden cameras, yeah. Inside the peephole of the door, outside on a service cart in the hallway, likely to watch for police or security approaching.
Are they recording?
Here's the chilling part. They were functional, but they were not recording. It suggests he was monitoring them live, perhaps on a tablet, but didn't intend to leave behind footage of the event itself or his preparations in the room.
Was anyone else ever charged in connection with the attack?
Only tangentially. A man named Douglas Haig. His fingerprints were found on some unfired armor-piercing ammunition in the suite.
What was his connection?
He was an ammunition seller, but wasn't licensed to manufacture it. He eventually pleaded guilty in 2020 to illegally manufacturing ammunition.
So it confirmed Paddock accessed some specialized ammo through non-standard channels.
Yes, but it did nothing to explain the why.
And that lack of a clear why created a breeding ground for something else.
Misinformation. Instantly. The moment authorities admitted they didn't have a definitive motive, the conspiracy theories just exploded online.
Where did they come from initially?
All over. Places like 4chan boards, fringe news websites like Your Newswire. They immediately started pushing false stories, different shooter identities, claims of a second gunman on a lower floor.
And foreign actors jumped in.
Oh, yeah. Sputnik, the Russian state news agency, put out false claims that the FBI had linked Paddock to terrorism. ISIS made their unsubstantiated claim. It became a tool to sow confusion and distrust.
Tech platforms got caught in the middle of this.
They did. Google and Facebook faced massive criticism because these fake news stories and conspiracy theories were surfacing right at the top of search results and news feeds in the hours after the attack.
A failure to curate information in a crisis.
Absolutely. YouTube had a particularly bad problem with conspiracy videos spreading rapidly. They actually had to change their search algorithm afterwards to prioritize more authoritative news sources in breaking news situations. It was a real wake-up call for them.
And the impact wasn't just theoretical. It hurt the actual survivors.
Horrifically so. Victims and their families faced online harassment, vile accusations of being crisis actors, part of a government plot, a secondary trauma inflicted by these baseless theories.
There's an argument that trying to remove that content can backfire, right?
Yeah, political scientist Joseph Uczynski made that point. Aggressively scrubbing conspiracy content can sometimes feed the narrative for believers. See, they're trying to hide something. It creates this difficult balance for platforms between stopping harassment and avoiding the appearance of censorship that fuels further distrust.
Okay, the aftermath. Politically, the shooting forced the gun control debate back into the spotlight, at least briefly.
It did. President Trump called Paddock sick and demented, labeled the attack an act of pure evil. Standard responses in these situations.
But behind the scenes,
A White House memo argued against pushing for tighter gun control laws. The reasoning was that new laws wouldn't stop someone like Paddock, a madman, but would infringe on the rights of lawful gun owners. So the focus shifted away from broad legislative action pretty quickly.
except for one specific item, the bump stocks.
Yes, that became the focus, because they were so clearly instrumental in the high casualty rate, the ability to achieve that near-automatic rate of fire.
And there was actually some bipartisan movement on that.
Surprisingly, yes. Democrats, obviously, but also some Republicans expressed support for regulating or banning them. Even the NRA suggested they should be subject to additional regulation, though they preferred the ATF handle it administratively rather than Congress passing a new law.
Did states act first?
Massachusetts did. They became the first state to ban bump stocks in November 2017, just a month after the shooting.
And then a federal ban followed.
Yes, in December 2018, the Trump administration's Justice Department finalized a rule reclassifying bump stocks as machine guns under existing federal law, effectively banning them nationwide via ATF regulation.
But that ban didn't last.
No. The legal basis was challenged, arguing the ATF overstepped its authority by redefining machine gun administratively.
And it went to the Supreme Court.
It did. And in June 2024, the Supreme Court overturned the ban.
What was their reasoning? How could they say it wasn't a machine gun when it fired so fast?
It came down to the precise wording of the National Firearms Act of 1934. That law defines a machine gun as a weapon that fires continuously by a single function of the trigger.
Okay. The court majority argued that even with a bump stock, the trigger technically has to reset and be activated for each shot. Even though the bump stock uses recoil to make this happen incredibly rapidly and automatically against the stationary finger, they ruled it didn't meet the single function definition in the statute.
So technically, multiple trigger actions are happening just really, really fast.
That was the legal interpretation. The ruling explicitly stated Congress is free to pass a new law, specifically banning bump stocks or amending the definition of machine gun. But the ATF couldn't do it on its own under the existing law. So bump stocks are currently legal at the federal level, again, unless a state bans them.
Correct. The federal ban enacted after Vegas was struck down.
Wow. Okay. Switching gears to the civil side. Lawsuits against MGM, the owner of Mandalay Bay.
Yes, a major lawsuit was filed on behalf of about 450 victims. The core claim was negligence, that MGM should have had better security procedures to detect Paddock bringing that arsenal into the hotel over nearly a week.
And MGM's response was?
Controversial. Extremely. They countersued hundreds of the victims.
Countersued the victims. How?
They used a federal law called the Safety Act. It was passed after 9/11 to shield companies that provide anti-terrorism technologies or services from liability in the event of a terrorist attack.
How did that apply here? This wasn't deemed terrorism.
MGM argued that their security measures, provided by a third-party vendor certified under the Safety Act, qualified them for protection. They were essentially trying to get the lawsuits dismissed and moved to federal court under the umbrella of this post-9/11 anti-terrorism law.
It seems like a huge legal stretch and terrible optics.
The public backlash was intense, as you can imagine. Using a law meant for terrorism defense against victims of a mass shooting by a lone gunman with no terror links. It didn't sit well.
Did it work?
Ultimately, no. The legal maneuvering and public pressure likely contributed to MGM reaching a settlement.
How much was the settlement?
$800 million, agreed upon in 2019 and officially approved in 2020. It resolved the claims for the vast majority of the victims and their families.
What about the hotel itself, Mandalay Bay? Any lasting changes there?
Physically, yes. They tried to erase the direct association. They renumbered the floors, so there is no longer a 32nd floor accessible to the public.
Just skipped it.
Yeah. Goes from 31 to 33 in the elevator buttons now. And Paddock's actual rooms, 32-135 and 32-134, were permanently sealed off, renovated, and are not available to guests.
And the concert venue site? Las Vegas Village.
That's also being transformed. MGM donated 2 acres of the land back in 2021 for the development of a permanent memorial to the victims, the 1 October Memorial.
That's good.
And they sold the remaining 13 acres in 2022 to the 3 affiliated tribes of North Dakota who plan to build a non-gaming development there. So the site itself will have a new purpose alongside the memorial.
There's one last incredibly tragic connection we need to mention. The Thousand Oaks shooting.
Yeah. Just over a year later, November 2018, the shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks, California.
And some survivors from Las Vegas were there.
Unbelievably, yes. Several people who had survived the Route 91 harvest attack were present at Borderline that night.
And one of them,
Telemachus Orphanos, who had survived Vegas, was killed in the Thousand Oaks shooting.
just devastating. It speaks to the reach of this kind of violence.
It really does. That awful overlap underscores the persistent trauma and, frankly, the statistical possibility of encountering this kind of violence multiple times in America today.
Wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground. The sources give us this chillingly clear picture of the how. Stephen Paddock's meticulous planning, the arsenal, the exploitation of the hotel systems, the execution of the attack, it's all laid out in excruciating detail.
It is. The investigation answered the who, what, when, where, and how with near certainty. We know the mechanics of the tragedy, and yet that definitive why just isn't there. It remains elusive, officially undetermined. The FBI's best behavioral minds couldn't pin down a single clear motive that died with Paddock. And this raises, I think, a really crucial question for you, the listener, to think about. When something this catastrophic happens, driven by motives that remain hidden, that are perhaps purely internal to the perpetrator, what's the long-term cost? What is the emotional, the psychological toll on a community, on a society that can never fully understand the mechanism of its own pain? What does it mean when the goal seems to be just maximum carnage, without an ideology you can point to, fight against, or even comprehend?
It leaves this profound void, doesn't it? A space that facts and timelines, as detailed as they are, just can't seem to fill. Thank you for joining us for this crucial deep dive.